A medieval doctor might have prescribed moldy bread for your infected wound. The world of medieval medicine seems filled with bizarre and barbaric rituals, yet hidden in that history are genuine cures that actually worked. By the end of this video, you will know 20 of these effective treatments and understand the surprising science that proves their worth. How could using live maggots or drinking willow bark tea possibly be considered good medicine? We are about to separate enduring medical truth from ancient myth. What does it take to find real healing in a world of superstition? The key to health was thought to flow through 4 vital fluids. This was the world of the 4 humors, a powerful idea that shaped every medical decision for centuries. Picture your body not as a collection of organs, but as a delicate ecosystem of liquids. Blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, each one linked to a season, an element, and even a personality type. A cheerful, ruddy-faced person was considered sanguine, full of blood. A sluggish, thoughtful individual was phlegmatic. The goal was not to fight germs, but to restore a perfect internal balance. If you had a fever, a medieval doctor might diagnose an excess of hot, fiery yellow bile. The cure would aim to cool you down, perhaps with a cooling diet or by releasing some of that excess humor through a method like bloodletting. This system, passed down from ancient Greek and Roman scholars, provided a complete, if flawed, logic for every symptom. It was a world where your mood and your physical health were intimately connected, and treatment was a holistic art. This knowledge was carefully guarded and cultivated in the quiet scriptoriums and herb gardens of monasteries. Monks painstakingly copied ancient texts, preserving recipes and observations that might have otherwise been lost. They grew rows of medicinal plants, becoming the pharmacists of their age. Meanwhile, outside the monastery walls, practical medicine was often in the hands of the barber surgeon. This was the person you went to for a haircut, a tooth pulling, or setting a broken bone. Their tools were basic, their understanding of infection was non-existent, but their hands-on experience with the human body was immense. They learned by doing, through trial and a great deal of error. It is within this fascinating collision of ancient theory, religious devotion, and gritty, practical trial and error that we find our first genuine cures. These were not miracles of modern science, but discoveries born from close observation of what actually seemed to help, even if the reason why remained a mystery for centuries to come. Our first genuine cure is something you likely have in your kitchen right now: honey. For a medieval warrior with a battlefield injury or a farmer with a deep cut from his tools, one of the most reliable treatments was to carefully pack the wound with this thick, golden substance. This was not a rare secret but common practice, recorded in medical manuals like the Anglo-Saxon leech books and advocated by famous surgeons such as John of Arden in the 14th century. At first glance, it seems almost too simple. How could something so sweet and sticky possibly fight a life-threatening infection? The answer lies in honey's remarkable physical properties. It is hygroscopic, a scientific term meaning it actively pulls moisture from its surroundings. When applied to a wound, it draws the water out of bacterial cells, causing them to shrivel and die. Its incredibly high sugar content creates a harsh environment where bacteria simply cannot survive or multiply. And on a chemical level, certain enzymes in honey slowly release tiny amounts of hydrogen peroxide, a gentle but effective antiseptic. This three-pronged attack made raw honey a formidable, natural antibiotic. Modern science has not only confirmed this but refined it. Clinical studies now show that specific types, like Manuka honey from New Zealand, are exceptionally effective at promoting healing in stubborn wounds, severe burns, and even post-surgical sites. So while a medieval healer did not understand germ theory, Their keen observation of nature provided a cure that was both profoundly simple and scientifically sound. They saw that honey-coated wounds healed cleaner and faster, and that was enough. This pattern of practical discovery, of finding what works even without knowing why, becomes a recurring theme. It leads us to another treatment that, at first listen, sounds utterly horrifying, yet shares that same thread of hidden, effective logic. That same practical logic of finding relief in the natural world leads us to a second cure growing along the riverbanks. For a person suffering from a pounding headache or the aches of a fever, a common remedy was a bitter tea made not from leaves but from the bark of the willow tree. This was not a medieval invention, but a practice inherited from far older traditions, recorded by civilizations like the Sumerians and Egyptians, and faithfully carried forward for generations. A healer would carefully strip the gray bark, steep it in hot water, and offer the resulting infusion to someone in pain. They did this because they observed it worked. The patient's fever would often break, their joint pain would ease, and their headache would dull to a manageable throb. The reason behind this effectiveness was a complete mystery to them, often explained through a belief called the doctrine of signatures. This was the idea that a plant's physical appearance held clues to its medicinal purpose. Since willow trees thrived in damp, cold, marshy places associated with fevers and aches, it seemed logical that they could counter those very ailments. While the reasoning was symbolic, the outcome was undeniably real. Centuries later, modern chemistry revealed the secret. Willow bark contains a compound called salicin. When ingested, our bodies convert salicin into salicylic acid. This substance is a powerful anti-inflammatory agent, reducing swelling, calming pain, and helping to lower fever. In the late 19th century, scientists would modify this natural compound to create acetylsalicylic acid, a substance you know today as aspirin. So every time someone takes an aspirin tablet, they are partaking in a medicinal lineage that stretches back to those medieval herbalists and their pots of willow bark tea. They may have misunderstood the mechanism, but their careful observation of cause and effect gave the world one of its most fundamental tools for managing discomfort. This pattern of discovering powerful medicine in plain sight continues, and it takes an even more unexpected form next, one that involves not plants, but a creature most of us would instinctively recoil from. The thought of willingly placing live maggots into an open wound is enough to make anyone shudder. Yet this is precisely what some medieval battlefield surgeons began to do, not out of desperation, but from a startling observation. They noticed that soldiers whose terrible injuries had become infested with the larvae of certain flies often had a better chance of recovery. While the wounds of others might turn black with gangrene, these particular injuries appeared cleaner, the flesh pink and healing, as if the rot had been carefully scraped away. This was not magic, but a form of nature's own surgery. The surgeons, with meticulous care, began to cultivate and apply specially selected maggots from species like the green bottle, fly directly onto wounds plagued by dead tissue. The results were undeniable. These tiny creatures are consummate specialists. They feed exclusively on necrotic material, the dead and decaying flesh that can harbor infection and prevent healing. Their minute mouths work with a precision no human hand could match, meticulously consuming every bit of dead tissue while leaving the surrounding healthy, living flesh completely untouched. Furthermore, as they feed, the maggots release secretions that possess natural antibacterial properties, creating a sterile environment that actively fights off infection. This practice, known as maggot debridement therapy, fell out of favor with the discovery of modern antibiotics in the 20th century, but in a powerful twist, it has made a dramatic comeback. Today, in the face of antibiotic-resistant bacteria and chronic, non-healing wounds like diabetic ulcers, modern medicine has returned to this ancient technique, now called biosurgery. Sterile, medical-grade maggots are applied under dressings where they perform their precise cleaning work, often saving limbs and lives when other treatments have failed. It stands as one of the clearest examples of a medieval observation, born from the grim reality of the battlefield, being validated and elevated by contemporary science. It proves that sometimes the most effective answer is not a complex chemical, but a simple, living organism performing its natural role. This respect for nature's toolkit extended far beyond animals and into the plant kingdom, where another common garden ingredient held a secret power against one of history's most devastating illnesses. Even the most humble kitchen scrap held potential for healing, long before a laboratory accident revealed the power of penicillin. A common household observation was guiding treatment. If a cut became red, swollen, and hot to the touch, a medieval healer or even a concerned family member might reach for a piece of stale bread or cheese covered in a fuzzy, blue-green mold. They would gently apply this strange poultice directly to the infected wound. To us, this seems like inviting more trouble, but their experience told a different story. Time and again, they noticed that wounds treated this way were less likely to fester, and the painful inflammation would often subside. They were practicing a crude but effective form of antibiotic therapy, completely unaware of the microscopic battle they were initiating. The secret lay in the mold itself, typically a common type called penicillium. As this fungus grows, it produces natural chemical compounds to fight off rival bacteria in its environment. When placed on an infected wound, these same compounds begin to attack the harmful bacteria causing the problem. The medieval application was unpredictable, of course. The strength of the antibiotic substance varied wildly depending on the specific strain of mold and how much had grown. It was not a standardized dose, but it was a principle born from pure, repeated observation. People saw a pattern, a cause and effect, and they acted upon it. This is the heart of empirical medicine, learning what works simply by seeing what happens. It was an intuition, a lucky guess embedded in folk practice for generations. When Alexander Fleming famously discovered penicillin in 1928, he was not inventing the concept, he was isolating and understanding the active agent that village healers had been harnessing, in their own imperfect way for centuries. Their kitchen shelf remedy was a flicker of profound medical truth, waiting for science to catch up and explain the brilliant mechanism behind the mold. This intuitive reach into the natural world for answers did not stop with fungi. Sometimes the remedy was not about applying something, but about carefully removing something else, guided by a logic that we now know was dangerously incomplete, yet occasionally stumbled upon a beneficial result. The strong scent of garlic was more than just a kitchen aroma in the medieval world. It was the smell of protection. This humble bulb was revered as a near-universal remedy, a true panacea kept in every healer's satchel and home pantry. For a persistent toothache, a clove might be placed directly against the gum. For a racking cough or a deep chest complaint, it was boiled into syrups or mixed into pungent drinks. During times of widespread illness, people would even wear strings of garlic around their necks as protective amulets, believing its very presence could ward off miasmas and evil spirits. While it could not stop the devastation of the plague, this faith in garlic was not entirely misplaced. Modern science has uncovered the remarkable secret behind its potency. When a garlic clove is crushed or chopped, it releases a compound called allicin. This substance is a powerful natural antibiotic, capable of fighting a wide range of bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Its antimicrobial activity made it genuinely effective against many common infections and internal parasites that plagued medieval life. Beyond that, we now understand that regular consumption of garlic supports cardiovascular health by helping to lower blood pressure and manage cholesterol levels. So while the amulet may have been symbolic, the decision to consume garlic in large quantities was a form of practical, preventive medicine. It was a functional food, a daily dose of wellness that bolstered the body's defenses in a world full of unseen threats. This practice of turning to the garden for defense leads us to another plant, one whose cheerful yellow flowers masked a potent and carefully measured power. The cheerful yellow flowers of the common daisy held a secret far more potent than its humble appearance suggested. Known to medieval herbalists as Feverfew, this plant was a cornerstone remedy for one of humanity's oldest afflictions, the migraine headache. Healers would prepare teas or chew the bitter leaves directly, offering relief to those suffering from debilitating head pain, often accompanied by nausea and sensitivity to light. Their understanding, steeped in the humoral theory, might have framed it as cooling a hot, bilious head, but the practical result was what mattered. Centuries later, modern clinical trials have confirmed what those medieval gardens knew. Feverfew contains compounds called parthenolides, which help prevent the constriction of blood vessels in the brain and reduce inflammatory substances, two key triggers of migraine attacks. For many people today, standardized Feverfew supplements are a proven, natural prophylactic, reducing the frequency and severity of migraines. This tiny flower represents a perfect alignment of ancient observation and modern confirmation, a living testament to the intuitive wisdom embedded in the medieval pharmacopoeia. It is a reminder that effective medicine can grow quietly by the roadside, waiting for science to decipher its language. This journey from garden to genuine cure now takes a turn toward a practice that, on its surface, seems the most barbaric of all, yet hides a kernel of startling, modern truth within its misunderstood history. The sight of a physician applying a squirming leech to a patient's skin defines our darkest image of medieval medicine. For centuries, the practice of bloodletting was guided by a dangerously flawed logic, the idea that draining a humor could rebalance the body, a treatment applied with such vigor it undoubtedly harmed more than it helped. Yet, in a remarkable twist of medical history, the humble leech itself has been redeemed. While the theory behind its use was wrong, the creature's unique biology has secured it a legitimate and life-saving role in 21st century hospitals. The secret lies in the leech's saliva, a sophisticated cocktail of over 100 bioactive substances. When it bites, it injects a powerful anticoagulant called hirudin, which prevents blood from clotting, and a local anesthetic, so the host feels no pain. This allows the leech to feed freely, but these same properties are what make it a modern medical marvel. In the delicate world of reconstructive microsurgery, after a surgeon reattaches a severed finger or a piece of scalp, a critical challenge arises. The tiny veins which carry blood away are far harder to reconnect than the arteries that bring blood in. This can lead to venous congestion, where blood pools in the reattached tissue, threatening it with death from lack of circulation. This is where the leech earns its keep. Applied strategically, it gently drains this excess, stagnant blood, relieving the pressure. More importantly, as it feeds, its hirudin-laced saliva keeps the bite wound bleeding freely for hours, creating a temporary venous outflow that buys precious time for the body's own microscopic veins to regenerate and reconnect. It is a form of biological plumbing, a living, breathing therapy that no machine can replicate. So the medieval barber surgeon's tool of choice, once a symbol of medical ignorance, is now a sterile, prescription-only device used in top-tier trauma centers. It teaches us a profound lesson that sometimes a valid tool can be wielded for the wrong reasons for centuries, waiting for the right understanding to reveal its true, miraculous purpose. A dusty corner of a barn or a forgotten space beneath the eaves held a potential first aid kit. For a farmer who nicked his hand with a scythe, or a child who scraped a knee on a stone, the immediate remedy was often a quick, gentle press of a spider's web directly onto the bleeding cut. This was not a rare secret, but a widely known piece of folk wisdom, passed down through generations and even noted in practical household manuals. At first glance, it seems like the stuff of fairy tales, using something so delicate and insubstantial to stop the flow of blood. But the spider, that master architect, had already engineered the perfect solution. A clean web is more than just sticky threads. It is a sophisticated biological material. The silk itself is rich in vitamin K, a nutrient that is absolutely essential for the body's natural blood clotting process. When pressed into a wound, the web does two critical things. First, its fine, crisscrossing fibers create a physical mesh, a natural scaffold that gives platelets in the blood something to cling to and aggregate upon, much like vines climbing a trellis. Second, that vitamin K seeps into the wound site, giving the body's own clotting cascade a helpful nudge. Together, these actions transform the fragile web into an effective, organic bandage and coagulant. While no one today would recommend foraging for spider webs given the risk of modern contaminants, the underlying principle is sound and still in use. The sterile gauze pads in any modern first aid kit work on a very similar idea, providing a clean, fibrous matrix to promote clotting and protect the injury. So this medieval stopgap measure, born from necessity and keen observation of the natural world, was a stroke of practical genius. It recognized that sometimes the most advanced technology is already being woven quietly and patiently right above our heads. This intuitive use of materials at hand extends to another realm entirely, where the goal was not to stop a flow, but to start a crucial internal process of healing. The quiet gardens of a monastery were not just for contemplation, but for cultivation of very specific relief. Among the orderly rows of herbs, peppermint held a place of honor, its sharp, clean scent rising from the leaves. Monastic infirmarians, the caregivers of their communities, would harvest this plant not for its flavor, but for its power to soothe a troubled stomach. For a brother suffering from rich food or a traveler arriving with cramps and nausea, the remedy was a simple infusion, a tea brewed from fresh or dried peppermint leaves. Sometimes they would simply chew the leaf itself, allowing its oils to spread through the mouth and down into the digestive system. The relief it provided was swift and noticeable, easing bloating, calming spasms, and settling the stomach. This was not a guess, but a recorded and repeated practice, a trusted entry in their medical herbals. The secret to its success lies in a compound called menthol. When ingested, menthol acts as a gentle antispasmodic, meaning it helps to relax the smooth muscles that line our gastrointestinal tract. Think of those muscles like a clenched fist during a cramp. Peppermint helps that fist to gently unclench, relieving pressure, pain, and the uncomfortable sensation of bloating. This medieval observation has been fully embraced by modern gastroenterology. Today, enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules, which release their contents safely in the intestines, are a clinically proven first-line treatment for the complex symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. It is a direct descendant of that monastic tea, purified and standardized, but operating on the exact same biological principle. This cure shows us how medieval herbalists, through patient trial and dedicated cultivation, became expert botanists and pharmacists. They learned to match a plant's distinct effect to a specific human complaint, building a reliable, natural pharmacy from the soil up, long before a single chemical formula could explain why it worked. The purple spires of the foxglove plant stand tall in shaded clearings, a beautiful but deadly landmark in the medieval landscape. Known by names like Dead Man's Bells, this striking flower was treated with immense respect and fear by herbalists, for they understood its power resided on a knife's edge. It was employed cautiously, often as a last resort, for a condition known then as dropsy, where a person's body would slowly swell with fluid as their heart grew too weak to pump effectively. In the hands of skilled practitioners like those recorded in the Welsh Midfi texts, a carefully prepared infusion of foxglove leaves could produce a seemingly miraculous effect. The swelling would begin to recede as the patient's body expelled the excess fluid. What these healers were witnessing without knowing the mechanics was a direct intervention on a failing heart. The plant contains potent compounds called digitalis glycosides. When ingested in just the right, minuscule amount, these compounds perform two critical actions. They gently slow an overly rapid heartbeat, allowing each contraction more time to fill with blood, and they significantly strengthen the force of that contraction, turning a weak, inefficient flutter into a more powerful, effective pump. This improved circulation allows the kidneys to finally process and remove the fluid that had been pooling in the tissues. The margin for error, however, was terrifyingly slim. A slightly stronger brew could easily tip the patient from remedy into fatal poisoning, causing nausea, vision disturbances, and a dangerously irregular heartbeat. This medieval practice was the ultimate high-stakes experiment, a precarious dance with a natural substance that held the power of life and death within its petals. Yet, their courageous and observant use correctly identified a botanical agent with a profound, specific effect on the human heart. Centuries later, scientists would isolate and purify the active ingredient, creating the drug digoxin. This medication became, and in some cases remains, a cornerstone for managing specific heart rhythm disorders and heart failure, a direct descendant of that risky folk remedy. It stands as a testament to the keen, if perilous, observational skills of medieval healers who mapped the body's responses to plants long before they could map the heart itself. Their work suggests that sometimes the most powerful cures are found not by avoiding nature's dangers, but by learning with immense care how to navigate them. Gold was not the only precious substance traveling the Silk Road. Alongside bolts of silk and sacks of pepper came a vibrant yellow powder, turmeric. While its deepest roots lie in the Ayurvedic traditions of India, this brilliant spice did find its way into the medical satchels of some medieval European healers, though it remained a rare and costly import. They knew it by various names, sometimes calling it Indian saffron, and they valued it for more than just color. Manuscripts note its use for cleaning wounds, for treating what they called melancholy or liver complaints, and for easing the deep, persistent aches of inflamed joints. A wealthy patient might be given a paste of turmeric to apply to a swollen knee, or a pinch might be stirred into a medicinal wine. The healers did not know the chemistry, but they recognized a pattern, a tangible reduction in swelling and discomfort that made the expense worthwhile. The secret behind this effect is a compound called curcumin, which gives turmeric its sunny hue. Modern science has revealed curcumin to be a remarkably potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant agent. It works by subtly interfering with the body's own molecular pathways that trigger inflammation, the same root cause of pain in conditions like osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Today, curcumin supplements are the focus of extensive research, not only for joint health but for its potential role in supporting metabolic and cognitive function. This 10th cure does more than highlight another effective plant. It reveals a medieval world connected by trade and curiosity. Medical knowledge was not locked away in isolated regions. It was a commodity carried on camels and ships. A healer in London or Paris might grind a root from a continent away, trusting in its observed power. Their willingness to adopt and test a foreign spice speaks to a universal pursuit of relief, a shared human instinct to find healing wherever it grows. This global exchange of ideas, of observing what works across cultures, laid a quiet foundation for the international medical science we know today. A deep, lingering sadness was not just an emotion in the medieval world, it was a spiritual affliction. They called it melancholy, a dark fog of the spirit often attributed to an imbalance of the black bile humor or even the influence of malevolent forces. The remedy, however, grew in sunny meadows and along woodland edges. St. John's wort, with its bright yellow flowers and tiny perforations that seemed to hold light, was known by a powerful folk name, chaste devils. People would hang bundles of it over their doorways and windows, believing its very presence could ward off evil spirits and the gloom they brought. But the plant's use went far beyond symbolic protection. Herbalists also prepared it as a tea or infused it in oil, administering it internally to those suffering from profound sadness, nervous unrest, and what we would now recognize as symptoms of depression. They observed a gentle lifting of that heavy fog, a return of calm and balance to a troubled mind. For centuries, this was framed as a battle against spiritual darkness. Modern biochemistry has revealed a different, yet equally profound, battle happening at a microscopic level. The cheerful yellow flowers contain active compounds, primarily hyperricin and hyperforin. These substances act within the brain in a way that is remarkably similar to some modern pharmaceutical antidepressants. They function as natural serotonin reuptake inhibitors. To understand this, imagine serotonin, a key neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of well-being and happiness, as a message being passed between brain cells. In some states of low mood, these messages are cut short because the sending cell reabsorbs the serotonin too quickly. The compounds in St. John's wort appear to slow down that reabsorption process, allowing the feel-good signal to linger a little longer and strengthen its effect. Numerous clinical studies have confirmed that standardized extracts of St. John's wort can be an effective option for addressing mild to moderate depression, validating an intuition that is hundreds of years old. It is crucial to note, however, that this powerful plant interacts with a wide range of modern medications, so its use requires careful guidance. This 11th cure represents one of the most poignant bridges between medieval and modern medicine. It shows a world that intuitively understood the connection between plant and psyche, between a sunny meadow flower and the inner landscape of a human mind. They may have called the enemy devils, but they correctly identified a botanical ally in the fight for light. This journey through the medieval pharmacy now takes us from the mind to the skin, to a remedy that soothed one of childhood's most common and uncomfortable ailments. A stubborn patch of yellow flowers pushing through the cobblestones was not an eyesore but an invitation. The dandelion, with its sunny face and tenacious roots, was a treasured resident of the medieval medicinal garden, far from the weed we might dismiss today. Its value was so directly understood that it earned a blunt, unforgettable nickname in the old herbals, piss-a-bed. This was no insult, but a precise description of its most celebrated function. Healers would harvest the long taproot and the jagged, green leaves to brew into strong teas or tinctures, prescribed for individuals whose bodies were holding too much fluid, or whose systems seemed sluggish and in need of a gentle cleansing. The goal was to promote the production of urine to help the body's natural filtration systems, the kidneys, flush out what was seen as excess or waste. They observed that after drinking dandelion tea, a patient's swelling would often decrease and their overall sense of wellness would improve. What they could not know is that this common plant was achieving its effect with a built-in safeguard that modern medicine would later recognize as crucial. Dandelion is exceptionally rich in potassium, a vital mineral that our bodies lose whenever we produce more urine. Many powerful synthetic diuretics developed in the 20th century had a significant drawback. They would strip potassium from the body along with the excess fluid, sometimes leading to dangerous deficiencies that caused muscle weakness and heart irregularities. The medieval healer's remedy, by beautiful accident, contained its own correction. The dandelion provided the diuretic effect while simultaneously replenishing the very nutrient that the process depleted. This created a more balanced, holistic treatment, supporting the body's function rather than overriding it. Today, herbalists and naturopathic doctors still recommend dandelion root and leaf as a supportive tonic for detoxification, to aid liver function, and to promote healthy kidney filtration. It stands as a quiet example of sophisticated botanical wisdom, where a practitioner using only observation and tradition stumbled upon a formula that modern nutritional science would later affirm for its elegant logic. They saw the whole plant as a complete remedy, and in doing so, they addressed not just a symptom, but the body's need for balance in the process of healing. This intuitive grasp of balance extended to another everyday substance, one that could calm a troubled mind not from the inside out, but from the outside in. The battlefield was a brutal testing ground for any remedy's true worth. Among the chaos, a surgeon's hand would reach not for a rare import, but for a common weed growing right there in the trampled grass. Yarrow, with its feathery leaves and clusters of tiny white flowers, was so trusted it earned names like soldier's woundwort and nosebleed plant. A wounded man would have its leaves hastily crushed and packed into his injury, a desperate bid to slow the relentless flow of blood. Time and again, this simple act proved its value, staunching bleeding with a speed that seemed almost miraculous. The plant's very identity was tied to this martial purpose, its Latin name, Achillea millefolium, reaching back to the legend of the Greek hero Achilles, who was said to have carried Yarrow to treat his own soldiers. While the myth is poetic, the biochemistry is concrete. Yarrow contains a potent alkaloid called achillene, a compound that directly accelerates the body's natural blood clotting process. Alongside it, anti-inflammatory flavonoids work to calm the tissue around the wound, reducing swelling and further leakage. Together, these constituents make Yarrow a powerful hemostatic agent, meaning it actively constricts blood vessels and promotes coagulation. What medieval surgeons witnessed as a life-saving field dressing, we now understand as a precise botanical intervention. The legend of Achilles using it may be just a story, but the countless soldiers whose bleeding was slowed by its leaves experienced a very real, very effective form of medicine. This validation of its legendary status continues today, as modern herbalists still prize Yarrow as a premier first aid herb for minor cuts and nosebleeds, a living link between the urgency of the ancient battlefield and the calm of a contemporary garden. It stands as proof that some of the most reliable tools are not complex inventions, but quiet, resilient plants that have always known how to heal. A deep, rattling cough in the chest was a sound of genuine fear in a world without antibiotics. For this desperate struggle, the medieval medicine cabinet offered a weapon that was as fierce as it was familiar, the mustard plaster. In kitchens and infirmaries, healers would mix ground mustard seed powder with flour and a little warm water or egg white to form a thick, pungent paste. This was not meant to be eaten, but to be spread onto a cloth and applied directly to the patient's chest or back. The experience was intense, a powerful, spreading heat that penetrated deep into the muscles and seemed to reach the congested lungs themselves. To the patient, it felt as though the illness was being drawn out or met with a fiery counterattack. The active agent in this humble plaster is a compound called allyl isothiocyanate, the very same substance that gives mustard its sharp, nose-tingling aroma. When applied to the skin, this compound acts as a counter-irritant. It creates a mild, controlled irritation on the surface, which causes the body to respond by dilating the blood vessels in that area. Think of it like the body turning up the local thermostat. This surge of warm blood does two important things. First, it helps to loosen thick, stubborn mucus in the bronchial passages, making it easier to cough up and clear the lungs. Second, the intense sensory signal from the skin can actually help to override the deeper, aching pain of inflamed chest muscles and bronchial tubes, providing real, tangible relief. The line between remedy and injury, however, was thin. A plaster left on too long could cause painful blistering, so timing and careful observation were essential skills. Yet the core principle they discovered, that stimulating blood flow to an area can promote healing and relieve deeper congestion, endures. modern mentholated chest rubs operate on a very similar idea, using cooling or warming sensations to open airways and soothe discomfort. The medieval mustard plaster was a raw, powerful version of this concept, a direct and visceral application of nature's chemistry in a battle for breath. It reminds us that sometimes relief comes not from stillness but from a carefully measured kind of heat. While the mustard plaster brought heat to a congested chest, another common garden vegetable offered its cooling leaves for a different kind of swelling. In the monastic infirmary or the peasant's cottage, a person suffering from painfully swollen knees or inflamed joints might find themselves wrapped not in linen bandages, but in the broad, cool leaves of a common cabbage. This was a remedy of pure accessibility, using what was on hand from the kitchen garden or the winter store. The healer would take the outer leaves, often slightly bruised or warmed to make them pliable, and layer them directly over the affected area, securing them with a cloth. For a nursing mother experiencing the painful engorgement of mastitis, these same leaves, cooled in a spring or well, provided a gentle, soothing compress. The relief was tangible, a reduction in the throbbing heat and a noticeable easing of the tight, painful swelling. At the time, this might have been explained through the doctrine of signatures, the idea that the layered, wrapped form of the cabbage head mirrored the body's own need for wrapping and cooling. But the true reason lay within the leaf's chemistry. Cabbage is remarkably rich in amino acids like glutamine and a suite of potent antioxidant compounds. Together, these substances possess strong anti-inflammatory properties, working at the cellular level to calm the biochemical signals that cause redness, swelling, and pain. The physical structure of the leaf itself plays a role, its smooth, cool surface providing a perfect hydrating barrier that helps draw heat from the skin while delivering its beneficial phytochemicals directly to the tissue. What was once dismissed as mere folk superstition has now been validated in modern clinical settings. Randomized controlled trials have demonstrated that cabbage leaf wraps can be as effective as some standard medical treatments for reducing pain and swelling in osteoarthritis of the knee. In maternity wards, lactation consultants often recommend chilled cabbage leaves as a safe, drug-free option for managing breast engorgement, a direct continuation of that medieval wisdom. This 15th cure embodies a profound principle of pre-industrial medicine, the intelligent leveraging of everyday food as functional therapy. It required no expensive imports, no complex preparation, just a keen observation of nature's pharmacy growing in the vegetable patch. They understood that nourishment and healing could come from the very same source, a holistic view that modern nutritional science continues to explore and affirm. The simple act of gargling with salt water connects us directly to the quiet infirmaries of medieval convents. There, a 12th century nun and polymath named Hildegard von Bingen recorded this precise advice for soothing a raw, inflamed throat. In her writings on natural science and healing, she prescribed a solution of warm water mixed with salt, instructing the sufferer to rinse their throat thoroughly with it. This was not a rare secret, but a piece of common, practical wisdom that echoed through household manuals for centuries after. At its heart, the remedy relies on a fundamental principle of nature, one that Hildegard and her contemporaries understood through observation rather than theory. When salt dissolves in water, it creates what scientists now call a hypertonic solution. This means the concentration of salt outside the cells is higher than the concentration inside them. Nature seeks balance, so fluid is gently drawn out from the swollen, inflamed tissues in the throat, much like a sponge releasing water when pressed. This reduction in fluid pressure directly alleviates the painful swelling, making it easier to swallow. Simultaneously, salt creates a mildly hostile environment for many common pathogens. While it is not a powerful antibiotic, its mild antiseptic quality can help to disrupt some bacteria and soothe irritated mucous membranes. The brilliance of this 16th cure lies in its elegant simplicity and absolute safety. It requires no special ingredients, carries no risk of harmful side effects, and addresses the core symptom of inflammation directly. It is a testament to an intuitive grasp of bodily processes. They may not have had the word osmosis, but they correctly observed that a salt solution could pull swelling and discomfort out of the body. Today, modern physicians still routinely recommend warm saltwater gargles as a first-line, supportive treatment for the pain of pharyngitis or a common viral sore throat. It is a rare point of perfect agreement between medieval monastic medicine and 21st century clinical practice, a humble, effective ritual that has transcended its era because it works with rather than against the basic physics of the human body. The scent of lavender drifting through a castle corridor was a deliberate act of care. In a world filled with uncertainty, this fragrant purple herb was not merely a decoration, but a practical tool for well-being. It was strewn across stone floors to release its aroma underfoot, added to wooden bath tubs for a soothing soak, and carefully sewn into small linen sachets to be tucked beneath pillows. Its purpose was universally understood: to calm a restless mind and invite a peaceful night's sleep. At the time, this profound effect was often explained through a spiritual lens, the belief that its pure fragrance could drive away evil spirits and the miasmas of melancholy that disturbed one's rest. While the supernatural reasoning has faded, the tangible outcome they observed was absolutely real. Modern science has unlocked the chemistry behind this ancient intuition. The essential oil of lavender contains key compounds, primarily linalool and linaloyl acetate. When inhaled, these molecules interact directly with the limbic system, the ancient, emotional core of our brain. They gently modulate neurotransmitter activity, producing a measurable sedative and anxiety-reducing effect. This is not just a pleasant feeling, it is a documented physiological shift, one that can lower heart rate, reduce cortisol levels, and ease the nervous system into a state conducive to rest. Today, lavender aromatherapy is a widely accepted complementary therapy, used in hospitals to reduce pre-procedural anxiety and in homes worldwide as a natural aid for insomnia. This 17th cure beautifully illustrates a profound medieval insight that the sensory experience of a fragrant herb could be powerfully linked to psychological and physiological balance. They may have credited spirits, but they correctly identified a botanical key to tranquility, using scent as a direct pathway to calm in a stressful world. This understanding that environment affects health leads us to a final, fundamental practice, one so basic it is often overlooked, yet it formed the bedrock of survival in an era of rampant contagion. A sharp, clean scent cut through the close air of a medieval home. Vinegar was far more than a kitchen staple, it was the smell of safety. In an era without refrigeration or modern antiseptics, this sour liquid was a cornerstone of household survival. It preserved food through the winter in pickled barrels. It was splashed across stone floors and wooden tables to cleanse them, and when someone suffered a minor cut or scrape, it was often the first thing applied to the wound. People did not know about microbes, but they could not ignore the clear evidence before them. Food soaked in vinegar did not spoil as quickly, and wounds washed with it seemed less likely to turn angry and red. This was empirical knowledge at its most basic, a powerful observation of cause and effect that guided daily practice. The active ingredient responsible for this preservative and cleansing power is acetic acid. In high enough concentrations, this acid creates an environment so hostile that many common bacteria and fungi simply cannot survive. While household vinegar was not strong enough to combat a major internal infection, its use as a topical astringent and disinfectant for minor skin issues was genuinely effective. It would dry out small wounds, tighten the surrounding tissue, and reduce the chance of surface-level contamination. This practical understanding reached its most dramatic expression in a famous legend from the plague years. As the story goes, a group of 4 thieves in France were able to rob the homes and resting places of those lost to the illness without falling sick themselves. Their secret was a protective wash made from strong vinegar infused with garlic and a blend of aromatic herbs, a recipe that came to be known as 4 Thieves' Vinegar. While the tale may be more folklore than fact, it perfectly captures the medieval faith in vinegar as a barrier against miasma and corruption. Today, diluted white vinegar remains a popular, natural cleaning agent in homes, valued for its ability to cut through grease and eliminate odors without harsh chemicals. Its historical role reminds us that effective medicine often began not with a grand theory, but with the simple, repeated act of noticing what kept things clean and preserved in an uncertain world. They reached for the most potent acid they had readily available, and in doing so, they found a measure of real protection. This pragmatic approach to wellness extended beyond external applications, sometimes turning toward the earth itself for a remedy that could settle profound internal distress. A sweet, lingering taste offered more than just pleasure. For a persistent, hacking cough or a burning pain in the stomach, the medieval healer would reach for a gnarly piece of licorice root. This was not the candy we know today, but the raw, fibrous root of the glycyrrhiza plant, chewed slowly or boiled into a thick, dark syrup. Its reputation was formidable, trusted to calm a raw throat, loosen a tight chest, and even soothe the deep discomfort of what they called inward ulcers. The relief it provided was direct and unmistakable, a coating, almost honey-like sensation that seemed to heal from the inside out. The magic, as we now know, lies in a compound called glycyrrhizin, a substance 50 times sweeter than sugar. But its power goes far beyond flavor. Glycyrrhizin is a multi-talented healer. It acts as an expectorant, helping to thin and clear stubborn mucus from the lungs. It is a potent anti-inflammatory, calming the irritated tissues of the throat and digestive tract. Remarkably, it even possesses antiviral properties, offering the body a subtle boost in its fight against certain infections. For stomach ulcers, modern research suggests compounds in licorice root can actually stimulate the production of the protective mucus that lines the stomach, helping to shield and heal the delicate tissue. This is why you will still find licorice extract listed in the ingredients of many modern herbal cough syrups and throat lozenges, a direct lineage from that medieval syrup. Yet the healers of the time understood this root was not to be taken lightly. Their herbals often carried a note of caution, warning against its overuse. They observed that while it brought powerful relief, taking too much for too long could lead to strange symptoms like swelling or a peculiar restlessness. This was an intuitive grasp of a critical medical principle, dosage. They recognized that the line between medicine and poison was often just a matter of amount. Today, we understand the precise mechanism behind their caution. Glycyrrhizin in excess can cause the body to retain sodium and lose potassium, leading to elevated blood pressure and fluid imbalance. Modern labels on licorice supplements carry strong warnings for this very reason, especially for those with heart or kidney concerns. This 19th cure reveals a sophisticated layer of medieval practice. It was not just about identifying a useful plant, but about learning to respect its power, to navigate its strengths and its limits through careful, observed application. They treated their botanical allies with a wariness that was both wise and necessary, a reminder that true healing requires balance in all things. A crimson poppy field sways under the Mediterranean sun, its beauty concealing a profound and perilous power. For the surgeons and physicians of the medieval Islamic world, and later their European counterparts, the milky sap of the Papaver somniferum poppy was not a mystery, but a carefully measured tool. They called it opium, and they understood it as the ultimate answer to humanity's oldest cry, the cry of pain. In advanced medical centers from Baghdad to Cordoba, texts meticulously described its harvesting and preparation. Surgeons would administer it, often mixed with wine or other herbs, to induce a deep, twilight sleep before undertaking the agony of an amputation or a bone setting. One of the most fascinating applications was the spongia somnifera, the sleep-inducing sponge. Healers would soak a sea sponge in a solution steeped with opium, along with other soporifics like mandrake and hemlock, then let it dry. When the time came for surgery, the sponge would be moistened and held over the patient's nose and mouth. The fumes would pull them under, into a state of insensibility that made the unbearable for a time bearable. This was not guesswork, but the systematic use of the most potent natural substance they had ever encountered. The reason for its staggering effectiveness remained locked within the chemistry of the brain for centuries. We now know that opium contains alkaloids, primarily morphine, which are molecular keys that fit perfectly into specialized opioid receptors in our nervous system. When these compounds bind to those receptors, they act like a master switch, blocking the transmission of pain signals before they can even reach the conscious mind. The medieval practitioners had, through trial and observation, unlocked the fundamental principle of all modern opioid pain management. They correctly identified nature's most powerful analgesic. Yet, even then, the wisest among them recognized the double edge of this miraculous tool. Medical manuscripts carried notes of caution, warnings about dosage, and the strange, compelling need that could develop in those who used it too freely. They were witnessing the shadow side of relief, the risk of dependency, and the clouding of the spirit that came with prolonged use. This 20th cure presents us with the most complex legacy of all. It is the purest example of a medieval discovery that was both profoundly right and inherently dangerous. Our modern struggle with opioid medications, with balancing essential pain relief against the risks of addiction, is not a new dilemma. It is the same tightrope those ancient surgeons walked, armed with nothing but observation and a deep respect for the poppy's formidable gifts. Their work gave the world a crucial weapon against suffering, while their caution reminds us that the most powerful remedies demand the greatest wisdom. They teach us that healing is not just about ending pain, but about navigating the difficult choices that relief sometimes requires. So where does this leave our view of the medieval healer? After walking through 20 cures from honey to opium, a clear pattern comes into focus. These were not random acts of superstition, but the results of a slow, careful process of observation. Their effectiveness can be traced to 3 interwoven threads. First, the raw power of nature's own chemistry. Plants like Willow, Foxglove, and St. John's Wort are factories of potent bioactive compounds, molecules that interact with our bodies in specific, powerful ways. Medieval practitioners did not know the words salicin or digitalis, but they could not ignore the consistent physical response these plants provoked. Second, this was a world built on relentless trial and error. When a barber surgeon saw that a spider's web helped clot blood, or that a mustard plaster eased a cough, that knowledge was recorded, shared, and put to the test again. It was empirical science in its earliest form, learning what works by seeing what happens time after time. The third thread is perhaps the most subtle, the power of belief and ritual. A patient who fully trusted in their healer, who drank a bitter tea with the conviction it would bring balance, or who wore a sachet of lavender for peaceful sleep, was engaging their own body's capacity for healing. We understand this today as the placebo effect, a real, measurable neurological response where expectation can influence outcome. In a world where illness was often framed as a spiritual or humoral imbalance, the ceremony of treatment itself became part of the cure. This trio of factors, natural chemistry, observed results, and reinforced belief, created a system that, while flawed, was far from foolish. it was a framework of applied observation. When a treatment yielded a consistent positive result, it was retained and passed down, even if the explanation for why it worked, like balancing humors or driving out spirits, was completely wrong. The healer with their leech or their moldy bread was not a charlatan, but a practical experimenter working within the strict limits of their era's knowledge. They were cataloging the effects of the natural world on the human body, building a database of cause and effect long before they could understand the causes. This perspective allows us to see their work not as a catalogue of bizarre errors, but as a necessary foundational step in a much longer human journey. They were the careful observers who mapped the territory, leaving clues for future generations to decipher. Their greatest legacy may be a lesson in humility, reminding us that even our most advanced modern medicine rests on the same bedrock principle: watch closely, see what happens, and learn. This hidden intelligence in the past offers us more than just historical trivia. Our journey through these 20 cures reveals a fundamental truth about how knowledge grows. Progress in medicine, and indeed in any field, rarely arrives as a single, brilliant flash of light. More often, it is a slow dawn built patient observation by patient observation, experiment by experiment, and yes, by a fair number of lucky accidents. The medieval healer watching a wound heal cleaner under honey or a fever break after willow bark tea was contributing a vital piece to a puzzle whose full picture they would never see. They were the careful note-takers of cause and effect, building a foundation of practical results upon which later science could construct its theories. So the next time you take an aspirin for a headache or reach for a honey-based ointment at the pharmacy, pause for a moment. Remember the lineage you are joining. You are part of a story that stretches back to monastic gardens and battlefield infirmaries, to men and women who looked at the natural world with keen eyes and asked a simple, powerful question: what if this helps? Their legacy is not one of superstition conquered, but of curiosity preserved. It is a reminder that discovery wears many faces across the centuries. If you found this blend of history and hidden science fascinating, there is so much more to explore. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the past that challenge what we think we know. And we would love to hear from you. Which of these 20 medieval cures surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.